So we're surfing the world's safest here, and we are getting coffee at the Lucky Llama Coffee House here in Carpinteria, California. And I thought that I would have a conversation with John Wolbrandt. Now, you know him as the Mural Man, because he's painted a number of really excellent murals here in Carpinteria, and he's a well-known artist and has got a number of things on display.
Hey, well, thank you very much for having me, David.
All right, so first of all, I'm going to tell you that this is not a radio show. We're just having a conversation, so it's just low pressure.
Well, how about if I turn my phone off then?
Oh, why not? I should have turned mine off, but there you go. I haven't. I used to, when I was in the studio, I would just lose my mind when someone would forget to turn their phone off and the mics were on and the phone would go off and be like, turn it off. Now I don't really care.
Well, it may not be a radio show, but you certainly have a radio
Well,
voice.
thank you. And one of the beauties of it, the fact that it's not a radio show and it's not live anywhere, is like, if I say something really stupid, I can always edit that out later before anyone actually hears it. So, the pressure's not on to be on. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so there you go.
That word edit is a powerful
yes,
word.
It is. So, one of the things that I realized that I've been doing as I've been doing this podcast, because I've got about, 5 episodes or something, not that many. I keep forgetting to give out my contact information. I think I gave it out like in the first episode at the beginning, and then ever since I've forgotten, so no one knows how to send me a nasty letter or naked pictures of themselves or whatever else. So if you're curious about the show, and you're curious about my guest, and you're curious about me, and you're curious what the hell am I doing here, you can always pop an email to Surf the World's Safest at gomulet@gmail.com. That's GOMULET at gmail.com. Or you can give me a call at 805-724-4995. Let's do that one again. It's 805-724-4995. Or you can always send us a letter. The Postal Service still delivers letters. You can put your panties in there or something, I guess. I don't know. But you can send it to Post Office Box 41733, Santa Barbara, California, 93140. Now, okay, that takes care of all the business that I have to attend to. So now let's get to our conversation with John, because this is a lot of fun, actually. Now, John, you're an artist, you're a painter, right?
Yes.
And a fairly accomplished one, and we've all seen your art on the walls of the buildings here in Carpinteria. Haven't we? And you're not a graffiti artist. So.
Some people have seen it, yeah.
And you've got a number of paintings for sale and that sort of thing, and so I wanted to talk to you about that. Just in being a Carpinteria local. I mean, this show is about Carpinteria, but it's not specifically for Carpinteria. I hope to expose other people outside of the area to Carpinteria and tell them exactly what's so special about being here. But in the meantime, we're hopefully being listened to by folks that are here in Carpinteria, and just about everybody, if they don't know you personally, know of you, because, they've seen your murals on town. And I stole one from my little Facebook group a long, long time ago, and I thank you for that. And, it's one of those things where in Carpinteria, we're a small little town. We all kind of feel like we know each other, but we don't really know each other that well. And so I don't know you very well, John, and I wanted to get a chance to learn more about you and your history here in Carpinteria, and in fact, your whole family's history here in Carpinteria, and kind of get your take on what's happening here in town. So, one thing that I want to talk about first is, and it doesn't really matter to most anybody really, but we both have little Facebook groups about Carpinteria. And you've got one called Celebrate Carpinteria, and I've got one called Carpinteria World Safest Beach. And you'd think there might be some kind of, I don't know, some kind of rivalry happening there or anything. I want to have the best group in town. Your group sucks. You know. But I've noticed that that's not really happening. And I really like that because I look at your group and I see stuff that I don't see on mine. And I like what you post. And you post a lot about events and stuff a lot more than I do. I tend to post more like news articles on what's happening in Carpinteria that I find on the internet or something like that. Whereas you tend to post a lot about events that are happening in Carpinteria. And I think they're really complementary. They have similar but different groups, of people that are interested in what we're doing. And I think that's really good, man. I think that your little Facebook group is an awesome one.
Well, thanks, David. And I'm really glad you brought up the subject matter of our two Facebook groups.
Yeah.
But before that, I have a little piece of business that I wanted to get to.
Okay.
And that is that right before I came down here to meet you, I got a message from one of your pals, Dennis Mitchell.
Oh, good.
And he says to say good morning and hello.
Excellent.
So he's kind of filling in even another little segment of our community by having his little radio program.
And I'm hoping to see that thing really take off,
Yeah.
Because I've known, Dennis and I were both working in radio, but we didn't know each other when we were both in radio. It's kind of funny that we become friends now after we both are no longer in radio. But he's doing the Carpinteria Valley Radio. And so if you're on the internet and you're curious about what's happening in Carpinteria or just surrounding areas, check it out, Carpinteria Valley Radio. And it's got a full lineup of like podcasts and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And he is actually one of the reasons that I have revived this podcast. Because I was doing a podcast years ago, sort of before COVID and everything, called which is kind of an outgrowth of my World Safest Beach Facebook group. So I did the World Safest podcast, and it was kind of an outgrowth of that. And so I've changed it a little bit. So now we're calling it Surf the World Safest, so we can include things that aren't necessarily about Carpinteria, but might be interesting to people who live in Carpinteria or surrounding areas. So it doesn't have to be about Carpinteria for sure. But still, we're sort of trying to blow that up a little bit. And Dennis had talked to me about his desire to create this radio station online, Carpinteria Valley Radio. And he thought, well, I'd really like to run your old podcast. And I'm like, well, that's old and I don't really want it. I wanted to start doing it again. But I didn't really know what I was going to do with it. I still don't know what I'm doing with it, to tell you the truth. And so Dennis decided that he was going to put together this online radio station. And he and I talked a lot about it. And we talked about actually populating it with podcasts. Because I thought that was an awfully good idea, because you got to pay for radio. You got to pay for music. You have to pay the licensing for music. And it can be very expensive to stream music on the internet, But the podcast, hell, people do podcasts and are happy to let you have one for free, so you play it, and they get the exposure. So he's populated this thing full of really cool podcasts. And this one in particular, Surf the World Safest, is one of those podcasts.
Oh, that's cool.
So Dennis Mitchell is a good friend of mine. I keep wanting to call him Dennis Miller.
Yes, I can see why.
Well, because it's whatever. I used to work with Dennis Miller, so I have him on my brain. So every time I see Dennis Mitchell, I'm like, hey, Mitchell.
Yeah. Well, now I did hear your at least one of your interviews on his radio program not too long ago, and that was fascinating.
Well, he was the first. He was my first guest on this podcast, but then also what I do is about every few weeks or once a month or so, he invites me up to his place where he does his radio show because he's on the air every morning People don't realize that, but he's doing a live morning show on the internet for local carpentarians. He does local weather. He does local traffic.
Yeah.
He does all the things that you would normally associate with a radio show, but he's doing them on the internet, And so for him to invite me onto his little radio thing and thought that I should revive my podcast was an awfully cool thing. So
yeah. He's a valuable resource because, for instance, what you do with World Safest Beach and what I do with Celebrate Carpinteria, it's a lot, as you know, it's a lot of work to keep fresh content on there, so his radio program is like right there, up to date all the time.
Yeah, and it's a great service to the people of Carpinteria. I mean, yes, we get some service from the radio. The local radio stations, like K-Tide in Santa Barbara talks a little bit about what happens in Carpinteria. Or Paul Menteri is on the air on KJEE, and he talks a lot about what happens in Carpinteria because he's got a connection to Carpinteria.
Great guy, by the way.
But he is a good guy. We've worked together for many years ago, so he's a valuable resource, but it's not really a venue that's exclusively Carpinteria.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to have somebody who wants to talk about what's happening here in Carpinteria.
And World Safest Beach, I say yours, it's actually, you've made it in such a way that it really does belong to the community.
Oh, I hope so.
But you're the one who has to do all the work. And both yours and Celebrate Carpinteria, they really are specifically Carpinteria.
Yeah.
We do wander into Santa Barbara a little, or Ojai or Ventura a little bit, but not much farther.
Right, exactly. And it's stuff that's like the people of Carpinteria would enjoy going to do in other locations, and so we try to keep it kind of Carpinteria centric. And I don't know. And it's a great little town, and I just love being. I'm not in the radio anymore, so I don't have anybody paying attention to me anymore. And
you're not having to pause for a commercial break on this right now either, are you?
That's true, actually. I can just do whatever I feel like doing. But though I wouldn't mind pausing for a commercial break because that would mean that I was making money. And I'm not, so there you go.
Oh, well, I got to tell you a little something about the Celebrate Carpinteria and Carpinteria World Safest Beach Facebook pages. The origin of Celebrate Carpinteria kind of happened organically because when we were preparing for the Carpinteria's 50th anniversary, the Golden Jubilee, I was meeting with the city and the other people that were putting on the celebration, and actually we met with them more than a year before it happened. And I found out from the city of Carpinteria that at that time, they were unable to have an official City of Carpinteria Facebook page. There were legal problems.
Really?
And there were other cities in California that had difficulties because people wanted to have access to that. They wanted to put their own content on, and other cities had run into some problems with that.
I suppose I can see why that might be a problem because there are a lot of, Carpinteria or Santa Barbara or whatever groups, but they're not like the City of Santa Barbara Facebook group or whatever. And so I can see where if it was like officially from the city, it might cause some liability issues.
They have a presence today, and it only started up a couple of years ago. But back in when the Jubilee was happening, celebration, the 50-year celebration, the city said to any of us that were on the initial committee that if we personally wanted to start a Facebook page specifically to help organize and advertise the celebration, that we could go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Well, no one else wanted to do it, and so that's how Celebrate Carpinteria came about. That's why the name is Celebrate Carpinteria, because it was initially for the Jubilee.
The celebration, yeah.
And it was designed from the beginning to be specifically like what you said, announcements about upcoming events.
Yeah.
And I had hoped that the organizations in Carpinteria would catch on to it to a point where they would give the content. But I got to tell you, here we are, I don't know how many years later, and I'm still having to dredge that information, just like you. You have to go out hunting for it, and some people will submit it, but Celebrate Carpinteria isn't quite as lucky as you have been. And you have Glenn putting his beautiful photos
Oh my
on.
God!
You have some great people that contribute content.
One of the things that, and excuse me for being self-promotional for a moment, but we have. I'm surprised. I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm thrilled at the number of really excellent photographers that we have posting their cool sunset photographs every day on the group, World Safest Beach. I mean, Glenn Dubach is what we're talking about. He's a local photographer, and he's very talented, and he takes a lot of photographs, and he posts them a lot on Carpinteria Facebook, or World Safest Beach, and it's so nice to see. And of course, he's not the only one. There are a lot of people that are living here in town that regularly submit really outstanding photographs. My wife is taking on photography, and she's got a bought herself a camera and done all that stuff. And so she's now submitting really nice pictures, and she's actually selling some of them and that sort of thing. It's nice that we want to share that beauty of Carpinteria.
Right. Yeah. It really reflects the passion that each of these people have, and they want to share that in an artistic way. So that's really wonderful, and I think that I probably rip off things from World Safest Beach.
Well, that's okay. It's for you to use, and I steal some of your stuff too, and it's okay. It's there for everyone to see. And if you want to put it on your page and help to promote it, that's fine with me too. And so it's like we're one of those communities. You talk about Carpinteria and the photographers and that sort of thing. If you don't know Carpinteria, you got to come here because we're a very artistic community. I mean, this Linda Fairley Carpinteria Art Center that we've got is just spectacular. I mean, for a town the size of Carpinteria to have a facility like the Art Center,
it's world class.
Is just phenomenal. And it's local artists, and you're displaying paintings there, and Glenn Dubach's displaying his pictures there. My wife has displayed pictures there. She actually got in the last jury art show, and she sold some paintings through the gallery and stuff. And so it's focused on the artistic members of our community and the people who love them. And I think that is a great thing about Carpinteria, and I'm so happy to see that they're so successful.
Yeah. The community has always had a fairly thriving art component, and here we're sitting right here at the Lucky Llama. And not far away is the community church, and behind the community church there was an art center when I was a teenager. And they had ceramics and painting, and there's always been some area of town that has been steeped in the arts.
Yeah, well, which I love. I love, and that's why I live here. And then I've lived here. I mean, I've not been here as long as you have been here, but I've been here for 20 years. And actually, that's one of the things that I want to talk to you about a little bit, because I want to get to know you a little bit better, John. And that is, you're a local guy, and everybody in town knows you, and they know your art. And they may not realize that, you've got links to this community that go back, well, before you were born, I guess. And your dad used to be the mayor?
He was mayor.
He was the city council, longtime city councilman, and he was the mayor?
Yeah, the city of Carpinteria was incorporated in 1965. An interesting thing about my dad, Ernie Wilbrandt, was that he and my grandfather, Clyde Wilbrandt at the time, they actually fought incorporation when that was a debate, being debated, and they were happy with the services that were being provided by Santa Barbara County, and but my dad felt that if in fact it should be incorporated, then he wanted to throw his hat in the ring and possibly be there to support the views of the people who voted no on incorporation. And in fact, that's what happened. The incorporation passed. but he was also elected to the first city council, and so he was able to represent a lot of the people with opposing views.
Right.
And eventually he was mayor for a long time, and he, for a long time, was the longest serving councilman. I think there have been councilmen since then that have been in longer, but at the time of his death, he had been on the council longer than anyone else.
Wow.
So, but about my family, if I can, be indulge in that subject matter a little bit. My family in this area goes way back to the Chumash.
Okay.
I'm actually a Chumash blood, and so my distant Chumash ancestor married a Spanish ship supply boy who arrived in Santa Barbara in 1794. And then along the way, a couple generations later, my grandmother's grandfather, I guess it would be, moved to Carpinteria. And so my grandmother was born at the Heath Ranch. Yeah, now we're sitting here again at Lucky Llama, and under the boughs of the Ward Home Pine, which is the Carpinteria City Landmark #1.
Oh, it is. It's #1.
#1.
Okay.
So it's a great place for us to start this little story. And City Landmark #2, I believe, is the Heath Adobe.
Okay.
That's over at Heath Ranch, and that's where my grandmother was born. So it's kind of a fun way to start telling about my family. And then my grandfather, that'd be my dad's dad, migrated here from Nebraska, and along with a bunch of brothers and sisters, and there was a whole bunch of Wolbrants spread from Santa Barbara to Ventura.
Okay.
And many of them in Carpinteria. My grandfather's brother became the, after having a plumbing shop, after having a peanut and popcorn stand on the corner on Mills Corner over here, Carpinteria Avenue and Linden Avenue, he put himself through law school, and he became the judge. And that was the courthouse directly across the street from where we're sitting right now.
Where the library is now.
Where the library is now.
Okay.
And so that was Judge Wolbrant's chambers. And my grandfather built a home on Walnut just a block away from where we are, and that's where I grew up. So I grew up a block from right here, a block from the downtown.
Is that where your street is?
Wolbrant Way's a block from there.
Okay, because I just think that's the weirdest little street. If you don't know Carpinteria, and you might not even know where this is, whatever. But Wolbrant, was it Way?
Wolbrant Way.
Wolbrant Way is the weirdest little. It's like a street that rolls through a parking lot, kind of, and it's weird.
It is.
Because it's like the street continues with a different name. But it's just Street. For that one block that's like in the parking lot. It's Wolbrant Way. And it's like officially Wolbrant Way. It's got a street sign, the whole bit. I'm sure you got a photograph of that, somewhere hanging up on your house or something. I would. Hell, if they named the street after my family,
Well, it's named after my dad.
Exactly. It's not named after you.
No,
it's after your dad. I was going to ask you if it was your dad or your grandfather it was named after, but it was named after your dad.
It's my dad. Yeah.
And it's right in front. It's right in front of the mural that I actually stole for the world's safest beach. Which I love this mural. And if you don't know the mural, I tell you what I'm going to do. I just had a sudden thought here. This podcast will go on the directories for podcasts like Spotify and Pandora and Apple Music and all that stuff. But I also upload it to YouTube, so that anybody that's on YouTube can find it as well. And what I have to do to put it on YouTube is I have to make it a video. Now, there are no cameras here to tape us talking at the Lucky Llama, so what I usually do is I put up a card that just says, surf the world's safest or whatever. I think what I'm going to do in this case, and if I can get the technical ability to actually do this, I'm going to instead put a number of pictures of your artwork up on the screen. Wow. So if you're watching this, you've been watching this slideshow of photographs, and I'll find some on the internet, but maybe you can email me pictures that you think you want to show on this podcast, whether they're your paintings or whether they're your murals or they're sculptures or whatever. You've got my card. Email
that's
me.
great.
I will include those
Thank
in
you.
the video feed on YouTube so that those who are listening to the show on YouTube are seeing your fabulous artwork right now.
Thank you.
But the one mural that you've got on Will Brent Way is of the Carpinteria, the world's safest beach. It's like a postcard, an old postcard of Carpinteria with people on the beach and everything. And I was when I started this group, I was searching for an old picture of one of the signs that we used to have along Carpinteria, saying Carpinteria World Safest Beach. I remember like back in the 70s, those went down there at First Beach of Linden Avenue and stuff. And so I was looking for one of those, and I happened across your mural, and I thought, well, okay, it's not exactly what I'm looking for, but it's a painting of what I'm looking for, and it's really cool, so I'm going to take it. And I didn't really know of you or anything. I just took it, And I realized, oh, this is John Wilbrandt. He's the artist, and I've stolen his artwork for my group,
The best artist is the best thief.
I changed it eventually.
Well, as long as you're talking about World Safest Beach and the signage for World Safest Beach, and a lot of people think back and they are remembering a giant billboard that said World Safest Beach.
Yeah.
And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure that ever really existed. Now, there were some wonderful billboards, and I've looked for photos and I haven't been able to find one that people have described. What I think that they are remembering, though, is a huge sign that used to be on top of a building, which today is the... what's the pet store over here?
Limos?
Limos.
Yeah.
On top of Limos, and for a long time it was Safeway, and it was All American Market, and it was a bunch of different things, as many of the buildings in Carpinteria have been reused through the years. But for a very long time, there was a huge sign across the top of that building that said Carpinteria World Safest Beach. And I think that's what people will remember, and you can find that in a lot of the old photographs.
Right.
In that same area, of Carpinteria Avenue, stretching from near that building to across the street in the direction of the theater, there was another sign that said Carpinteria, and I believe that it was actually lit with little light bulbs.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure. I've not seen a picture of it lit, but I have seen a couple of photographs of this big sign that said Carpinteria, and of course that was Highway 101.
Okay, yeah.
At the time. So, but moving back, I wanted to tell a little story about Will Brent Way. It was, when I was a little kid, it was back in the 50s. It was a car lot. And where Robitaille's Candies is today was a car agency. When I was a kid, it was called Dick Daly Chevrolet. Before that, it was Humphrey Chevrolet or Ford, or I don't know, but it was a car dealership. And Will Brent Way was their car lot, their outdoor car lot. And the building next to it, which the history of that building, it housed the Masonic Temple on the top floor when I was a kid. And on the bottom floor, it was the local hardware store that preceded the hardware store that most people remember on down the street across from the Palms.
Right.
And in that building, you used to go up a flight of stairs and onto these heavy wood plank floors. It was the true old-fashioned kind of hardware store with bins with scoops where you'd scoop the nails into little paper bags, and that kind of a hardware store. And so I grew up about a half a block from there, on the other side of the church that everyone knows. I think it's a Baptist church today. When I was a kid, it was a Methodist church. But the back of our property had a little gate, and we could cut through the back of the property and across the churchyard, and then cross Maple Avenue, down a little alley, and we'd reach the car lot, and which is now Will Brent Way, and we go through the car lot over to the a grocery store, and then to the post office, which was in the middle of the block between Carpinteria Avenue, on Linden Avenue, between Carpinteria Avenue and 9th, which is the extension of Will Brent Way.
Right.
And right in the middle of the block was the old post office. And so my grandfather and I would take that walk every evening, and he'd pick up the mail. And then we would continue on, and we'd cut the corner, because there was a gas station on the corner where that little coffee shop and nail salon and everything is on the corner now. That was a gas station. We cut through there over to Rexall Drugs, which is where approximately where what is it, Carp Kitchen, I think, is in there right now. Before that, Crush Cakes. And that was Rexall Drugs right in there. And my grandfather would buy a bag of Whorehound candies. And we'd sit there and get the gossip on Carpinteria. And then we'd head on home before dark.
Wow, what a great story, and what a great little town. What a great memory to have. It is. I mean, it's like, I've referred to this neighborhood, or this town, as Mayberry. You know, it's just very Mayberry-like. It's just so small, you know, and and working at the End of Times Motel number 666 that I do, I talk to a lot of people from out of town, you know, and it's like people come into this town and they just love it so much. You know, I mean, I grew up in Goleta, okay? And I went to high school in Goleta, and I grew up in Goleta, and I loved Goleta. It was a great little town. And then it started to build. And then they built the big box shopping center. And then they started building more condos and more condos and more condos, you know. And it just, now I go out to Goleta, and it feels like the San Fernando Valley to me. It really, really does. It's just way too big, you know. Whereas I come to Carpinteria, and somehow Carpinteria has been able to maintain that small town charm. And I don't know whether it's all I don't know what it is exactly. I mean, we have this little strip of land between the ocean and the mountains, and there's not a lot of room for more development, you know. And fortunately, we've got all these growers that are in the foothills here that have been able to hang on. And, of course, the people in Carpinteria are kind of ticked off that they're growing cannabis now. But they used to grow flowers before, and then the flower market kind of took a tank because of South America really undercut them. And so they were all dying on the vine here in town. And these properties that were here on the foothills really were destined to be sold off and become condominiums or whatever. And cannabis has allowed those growers to actually survive and exist and keep their farms and not turn them into condos. So somehow or another, we've been able to maintain that small town feeling. Whereas you go to other communities like Ventura or Santa Barbara or Goleta or whatever, and they just don't feel that small town way anymore. And so people that come and stay with me at the hotel just love Carpinteria so much. They just think it's a charming little town, and they just think it's so cool. And of course, I live a mile and a half from where I work, so I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? You know, because I live here, you know. But it's just great. So hearing a story about that, how it used to be, and then it could still be that way, kind of. You know, it's still like very hometown Mayberry feeling, I think.
Yeah, a little while ago you mentioned, or you introduced me as a mural painter or
the mural man.
Mural man, yeah. And you know, I've done a lot of murals, and I don't really like to be called a muralist because there are some really fine muralists out there, and I'm an artist. I just do all kinds of things.
You're just painting big, you know.
Sometimes at one point I had the largest painting west of the Mississippi.
Oh, really?
It was 6,000 square feet, and it was 5 stories high.
Wow, okay.
It was in the city of Mountain View. It's no longer there. Murals tend to have a short life. But something about the World's Safest Beach mural is, and you mentioned that it's a postcard within a picture.
Yeah.
It's 2 images.
Right.
And the central portion of it does look like a postcard. It's really set up to be kind of a Kodak moment.
Right.
Where people could have their photos taken in front of it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's surrounded, and it's a picture of a family enjoying their day at the beach.
Right.
And so it's kind of like a Chamber of Commerce view of Carpinteria. Yeah. And it's a take on a actual postcard. It's not identical, but it's a take on an actual postcard that does exist that was produced, I think, in the late 70s.
Okay.
Although it was more of Rincon Beach instead of the city's first beach at the end of Linden Avenue. But the people that are in the image on this pretend postcard are people that I grew up with.
Okay.
It's a family. I know both the husband and the wife. And the wife in the picture was a classmate of mine at Carpenter High School. And the husband in the picture is someone who grew up around the corner from me on 8th Street.
Okay.
Also just about a half a block from where the mural is. So that's kind of a nice little connection. Surrounding that postcard is the flora and fauna of Carpinteria. It's got the seals from the seal sanctuary on one side, and it's got the animals and plant life and such from the salt marsh, which is on the other side of Carpinteria. So it's cradled or embraced by those two more natural elements. But a moment ago, you also brought up the carp growers and a little bit about what's happening now with agriculture in the valley. And I wanted to say that the other major mural that I have here in Carpinteria is the history of agriculture in the valley. It has a big tractor on one end and it has a giant flower on the other end. And if you look at the mural, it starts on the right-hand side and moves to the left, the direction the tractor is pointing. And it starts with one of Carpinteria's earliest products, agricultural products, which is walnuts. Lima beans, then walnuts.
Oh, okay.
Those were the first two. And it was really a thriving industry here in Carpinteria that preceded the lemons and then the avocados.
Right.
And then ultimately the flower industry.
Right.
Which is where we were at. It was the beginning of the cannabis industry right when I painted that mural. But because it was the history of Carpinteria rather than the present Carpinteria, that's why we stopped with the flowers.
Sure.
And of course the flower industry has transitioned into the
different kinds of flowers.
There you go.
It's all flowers. They're all flowers, kids. They're all flowers. They're pretty.
That mural also, though, does have in the very center of it a giant avocado. Of course, we have in Carpinteria the what is called the California Avocado Festival.
Yes.
And so in the very center of that painting is a giant avocado. So hopefully people can come and have their picture taken in front of a giant avocado.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, that mural was just vandalized.
It was.
And you were quick to fix it. It was only like a day or two.
Well,
it was like
a little longer, but
it was just. It seemed like you just fixed it right away, you know. And this isn't really a topical news show or anything where I'm like following what's happening right now and discussing it as in news. But one thing I wanted to bring up was I'm kind of curious about it myself is what's going on. I know that there was the plan, or I don't know if it was a plan or not, but to put up some kind of like a fence or things in front of it because they're going to redo the BFA building. They're going to use it for what again?
Well, it's the Christman California Island Center. I think that's the official name.
Right. Okay. And so they want to put like stuff in front of your mural. Yeah. Which is not really a good thing. Now, I know there was a meeting a while ago about that, and kind of where are we right now with the status of our view of your mural?
Yeah. Well, this is a really good reason why your listeners need to tune back in and hear where we're going to go with this. We really don't know what the resolution will be. There will be one, and there are a number of really interested parties that have different points of view, and because my dad was a small-town politician, I tend to stay away from the politics as much as I possibly can. And that carries over into the guiding hand I have with Celebrate Carpinteria. I try to stay out of the politics. And boy, have you stepped in it a few times with your Facebook page. Oh, boy. Well, you're a little more courageous than I am. But behind the scenes, there are some people that are working towards a resolution to the situation that you just mentioned. Yes, the Island Center is planning for. It's changed names through the past couple of years from Pocket Park to garden or sculpture garden. I'm not sure where they've landed right now, but they have a number of pieces of artwork that they plan for that area. And so right now we're just trying to work with them and come up with a way that the people who really do love the mural and want to still have access to it potentially can. We're not sure how it's going to work out yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see what's happening. And like I said, this is not a topical news show, so by the time you're actually hearing this, it may actually all be resolved or whatever. But yeah, I'd like to see. I certainly would like to see us be able to see your mural. Yeah. So whatever they do there, I'm hoping they can find a use that's aligned with what's already there.
I would like to say that right now, aside from speaking about the mural, the fact that that particular building is such an important building to our community. It is at the crossroads of Carpinteria.
Yes.
It's the very center of Carpinteria Valley. And so when I was a little kid, my grandfather took me in there, and it was at the time Security Pacific National Bank, I think.
Okay.
And that's where I opened my first checking account or savings account first, and then eventually checking account. And one of the reasons why I had painted the mural with the theme of agriculture of the valley was because I felt at the time it was still the B of A bank, still operating, because so much of the community utilized that facility to develop their businesses in the valley. And that has to do with the thriving lemons and avocado orchards, and everything that was going on in Carpinteria would go to one of the banks for funding. And so that was kind of a nice connection there to see what the history was of the end result of the money that was borrowed out of that building. So I like that. Today, however, the building is now being repurposed by the Chrisman, California Island Center.
Right.
And hopefully it's really going to be a world-class facility that locals will eventually embrace. I've been given a peek inside, and I'm quite impressed with what they are developing inside that building. I know it seems to have been dark now for several years,
right?
And it will be fascinating when it finally does.
So that's going to be for Santa Cruz Island.
So it's initially funded. It was funded by the good people that are behind the Santa Cruz Island Foundation. However, it has been expanded now to hold all of the history and archives of all of the islands.
Okay.
And I really shouldn't be speaking for them. I don't know that much about what it is that they have planned. But it's going to be a facility that locals and people from far and wide will be able to come and utilize.
Well, I just think that the Channel Islands here, I mean, we see them every day off of our coast, well, except for maybe today because it's kind of murky out there. But, you know, we see them most days, and we forget that this is a major national park, and it's awesome. It's like, and we not a lot of us, I mean, some of us have been out to the islands and whatever, but we don't get out there very often. We forget that they're really spectacular. They're just not mountains out in the ocean. They're just these unique ecosystems that have separated from the coast of California, the mainland of California, and we have so much to learn about them. And I support local, and especially in Carpinteria, facility that will help to educate people and let them know how cool the islands are, even if they don't get a chance to go out there. And so I think it's going to be tremendous for Carpinteria as a city to promote tourism, because there will be people that will want to come from all over the place to this center to check the islands out, and not just Carpinteria. And I think that's outstanding.
So you've touched the third rail.
Okay. I know the people coming to Carpinteria. Oh my God.
There are many of us in Carpinteria that really do like to promote tourism. And then there are many of us in Carpinteria who just as soon, keep their secrets.
Right.
And, But because World's Safest Beach, which we keep talking about and is the title of your Facebook page, was initially developed to bring people to
Carpinteria,
and primarily to visit the motor camp or the beach camp, which evolved into the Carpinteria State Beach Park, which, by the way, as this interview is taking place, it's 2022, and I think that this year is the 90th, I believe the 90th anniversary of them securing it as a state park.
Nice.
But so that's where the term firstly came from. And you mentioned the islands, and some people tend to think of the reason why it's called people have different reasons for why they think
it's the world's safest beach. Why do they need? And that just came up as a subject not too long ago, as it has so often on my group, World's Safest Beach. Why do they call it the world's safest beach? And a lot of people chimed in of why it's considered the world's safest beach. And of course, there's a sign.
Yes, and I think that some people tend to say that it's the gradual slope at the beach.
Right. There's no undertow, or the islands are going to protect us.
The islands, we were talking about the islands, and the islands could potentially, because Carpinteria is cradled between the mountain range and the islands. Right. And so it could, if there was a tsunami, for instance, that maybe we would not suffer the consequences.
Kind of.
Who knows?
We forget that we're a south-facing beach, so that tsunami to be broken by the islands somehow would have to come from the south.
When I was a kid, they would joke around, though, about it being the world's safest beach because no one had ever drowned on the beach. Yeah. They'd all drowned in the ocean.
Right, so, exactly. The beach is safe. The ocean, however.
Yeah, I think it's kind of fun that people still play with different concepts of how we got some of the
we had
names.
A lot of speculation on the group as to why it's called Carpinteria World's Safest Beach. And I just stepped in, decided, because I knew as soon as I saw that question posted that there was going to be a number of wrong answers to that question. But I was just going to let it play out, And then eventually I jumped in and said, look, there's nothing. We're not the world's safest beach. We have no evidence that we're the world's safest beach. And the people who named it World's Safest Beach didn't have that evidence either. They just decided to call it that.
And we're not the only ones to call ourselves the World's Safest Beach. There's one in Florida.
Yes, exactly. I've found them. I'm looking on the internet for World's Safest Beach and find we're not the only one. And it's like, and all these people kind of, got in, why is it World's Safest Beach? Why is it World's Safest Beach? And then there's a plaque that you actually authored, some of the plaque, explaining why it's called the World's Safest Beach. And I already knew this story. But, back in the 1920s, the Chamber of Commerce decided it was going to be good for tourism to call it the World's Safest Beach, and then people would come up from L.A. to come to the World's Safest Beach. And that's why they call it the World's Safest Beach. That's the only reason it's called World's Safest Beach. That's the only reason.
Now, I think this also has come up on your Facebook page about Jelly Bowl. Now,
why is it called the Jelly Bowl?
And Jelly Bowl is one of the favorite spots for locals.
Yeah.
And people from other parts may not know where the Jelly Bowl is.
Right.
And but it's a really cool little part of the it's a cove.
Yeah.
It's a small cove.
Right.
And it's hard to find parking to get close by.
Yeah.
You can reach it by going through the state park.
Right.
And people have different ideas of how it got its name, but I can tell you how I think it got its name. When I was a little kid in the 50s, we would go down there. It was within walking distance from where I grew up, and we would go down there, and there's a path that goes down the cliff to the beach, to the sand, and there's seepage, tar that seeps up out of the sand right there in this little bowl, and some of the kids, not me of course, would throw sand over the tar and then make the path look like it went right through where the tar was.
So people would step on it, yeah.
And have tar on their. When we were kids, we always had tar on our feet. But that was the Jelly Bowl.
Yeah, okay. I didn't. I never knew. I never. I still. I don't really know why they call it Jelly Bowl, but I always assumed that it had something to do with jellyfish. But I don't really know. Whatever.
Yeah, there are so many little parts of Carpinteria that are cherished by the locals. Sometimes geographic locations and other stores and shops that are near and dear to the locals.
Right.
And not everyone, so many people really feel that these belong to them.
Yeah.
They take possession
Sure.
of
Oh,
them.
absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's yours. It's your town. You claim ownership of it, even if you don't own it, really. And I just think it's a very special place, and it's a lot of people don't realize just how cool it really is. And it's like I tell people, especially the folks that are staying at the motel number 666, about how fun Carpinteria and the surrounding areas are. I mean, there's a reason. Okay, and I know it's Montecito and it's not Carpinteria, but there's a reason that Oprah bought a house in this area, or Ellen lives in this area, which I know it's Montecito, but whatever, it's close enough. Or, hell, we got George Lucas fuckers. We got George, he's got all the money, and he lives in Carpinteria on Padaro, for Christ's sakes. And I see him at Summerlin Beach Cafe all the time, Yeah. And I figure if these people, with all the money in the world, choose to buy a house here in the Carpinteria area, that's got to be pretty good. I gotta feel pretty good about living here too, And it's funny because people are so worried about like the outside world learning about Carpinteria, and it's like, sorry, they already know about it.
Yeah.
It's like every time I post a story. Sometimes I'm kind of negative, whatever. Sorry, I'm negative. But I'll post a story on World Safest Beach about some celebrity buying a house here in Carpinteria. And inevitably, there'll be a number of people go, who cares? Who cares? It's like, well, okay. They're mad. They're mad that the celebrities are coming, and I guess they figure that they're going to drive the property values up and they'll never be able to buy a home. And who cares? Hollywood Lease coming to Carpinteria. Who cares? And so the other day, I posted an article that I found about, what's his name from Big Bang Theory? Howard Wolowitz. Simon Helberg. And he bought a horse farm here in Carpinteria. And I was initially preemptively negative when I posted about, here's somebody else that you can hate for buying a place in Carpinteria, Simon Helberg, and it's like, oh, I don't hate him. People are like defensive. I don't hate him. Well, I initially posted it because I assumed that I'd be flooded with comments about who cares,
Well, I saw that post and I realized that you were saying it a little tongue in cheek.
I was.
People took it the wrong way.
I know. I was trying to be sarcastic,
Yeah.
and people thought that I was suggesting that you despise the people who are buying homes here in Carpinteria. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm happy that Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher have a place along Padaro Lane here.
Yeah.
I'm happy that celebrities want to live in Carpinteria. I'm fine with that.
I don't speak about the celebrities myself, except after a few cocktails, maybe. But I have to say, having grown up here, there have always been celebrities.
Yes, there have been.
That have lived in the Carpinteria Valley, and so it's really nothing new.
I got to know Alex Rocco pretty well here in Carpinteria. Celebrities have always loved Carpinteria.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So one thing I did want to mention before we run out of time is that in Carpinteria there are some really fantastic organizations, and I'd love if you'd let me speak a little bit.
Absolutely.
Carpinteria Valley Association is one, and the good people that have saved the bluffs, for instance, that's an amazing accomplishment.
Oh, it is.
That the people got together in Carpinteria and managed to stave off the development of the bluffs. So that's fantastic. There's another fellow artist, Arturo Teo, who would make a great interview for you.
Okay.
He has an art gallery in town down at Palm Loft, is called Palm Loft, down by the entrance to the state park. And he really spearheaded, he along with Ted Rhodes and other people, worked really hard with a group of organizations that collectively saved the bluffs, which is a real asset. So there's that group. And as long as we're talking about some of the people that are steeped in the history of Carpinteria, I wanted to mention the Carpinteria Valley Museum of History, which is about, less than 100 yards from where we're sitting right now.
I want to interview them for the
on
show
Maple.
for sure.
You did, yeah? Or you're going to. Did you say
I'm going to. I want to, yeah.
It's a fantastic institution, and the director is going to be leaving there in about 2 months, I think, after having been there for many, many, many years. It's built on a piece of property that used to be my grandfather's cornfield when I was a little kid.
Okay.
And so I've been able to see, it looks like it's been there forever. That was the intent of the architect.
Yeah.
It's to look like one of the original buildings of Carpinteria. And they did a fine job of it. It's not some fake looking structure like you see with a facade in Santa Barbara, for instance. It's really, it feels like the real deal. And the displays in there tell the story of Carpinteria in a way that no other person or place can tell.
And it's another great facility to have in a town the size of Carpinteria. It really is valuable to share the history of Carpinteria. I mean, it's one thing to have, Santa Barbara, you got the Museum of Natural History, or you got the Art Museum or whatever. But in Carpinteria, the town the size of Carpinteria, to have a historical society that is as comprehensive as our historical society is really impressive.
That's right. So we do have the museum, the Carpinteria Valley Museum of History, and within a block of that, you could actually, from the front of it, you could almost see the art center that you spoke about a moment ago, which is a fantastic facility. And half a block from that is then the new Chrisman California Island Center. So we have some amazing things, and in between all of that are great beer, great wine, great coffee, great food. It's all right here, right downtown.
I love it. I mean, I'm a bit spoiled because since COVID happened, I've kind of scaled my life down quite a bit, as has everybody, and I love the fact that I get to live, work, and shop here in Carpinteria, and I never have to leave town ever if I don't want to. And I love that. I get off work about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I stand there in the parking lot, and I look at the 101 freeway headed towards Santa Barbara northbound, and I look at all the cars just putt, entering into the construction zone, bumper to bumper, and I'm imagining this happening pretty much all the way into Summerlin, Montecito, and I just think to myself, not today. That's not going to be me today. It was me for years and years, and it's not anymore. So guess what? I get to live here in Carpinteria. I get to work here in Carpinteria. I get to shop here in Carpinteria. I never violate about 2 miles of my bubble in Carpinteria, except for when I have to go into Santa Barbara or whatever for some business. But I just love that. I love that about Carpinteria, and that it's such a small little town that it's so, interested in what it's doing itself. It wants to keep its identity, and I think that's great.
Yeah, it's been many, many years of hard work by a lot of people to keep it that way. And I think that Carpinteria, like many towns, but particularly Carpinteria, has really shied away from change. And so recently, when they were doing the major renovations and expansion of the freeway, that runs right smack dab through the center of the Carpinteria Valley, a lot of locals, I believe, were fearful that it was going to add to the traffic in Carpinteria, and that it was going to bring too many outsiders in. But I think it's had the opposite effect,
Right.
that people are able to breeze right past us
Right.
on the freeway, at least once they're finished.
Right.
Once they get
Once
all
they get
the
it
lanes
finished.
open, and
Yeah.
people will be scooting right past us
Right,
on their
exactly.
way going north to Santa
Exactly.
Barbara and south to wherever else they're going. And so it'll keep Carpinteria even that much more special.
Well-
I'm glad that they did it.
I think it's going to be okay. I think, everyone's worried about tourism and too many people coming here and them constructing things. And I understand those concerns and everything. I mean, like I said before, I'm from Goleta, so I understand what that is, and so I don't want to see the same thing happen to Carpinteria. So I'm with you all there, but it's going to be okay.
Something else.
Carpinteria is going to be just fine. Don't worry.
And we've got to keep the economic engine running in Carpinteria.
I agree.
I really am sad to see when storefronts have to close for that particular reason.
Yeah.
And so, I love the idea that these shops can open and stay open.
Yeah. I'm with you there. Well, listen. We've been talking for a really long time. I think we're coming up on about an hour or so.
Oh, boy.
So I think maybe it's time to put a pause on it. Though I've found this discussion absolutely fascinating, and I hope that it's interesting for people who live outside of Carpinteria, because this is a primarily carp-centric podcast, but I'm trying to broaden it a little bit and talk about things that other people are interested in. And hopefully, I hope that other people who are listening to this, who are outside the Carpinteria area, are interested enough in Carpinteria to want to come here and explore Carpinteria. And I know that the locals sometimes don't want you to come because they're afraid they won't find a place to park if you're parked in their parking space. But you know what? It's going to be fun.
David J., thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
It has been a lot of fun. So listen, John Wolbrandt, as you've been watching on YouTube, you've been watching all this great artwork. Hopefully you'll dig that. And in the meantime, life's good here in Carpinteria. And we'll talk about, I don't know what we're going to talk about next time. I'm kind of playing this by ear. But in the meantime, this is an awfully good episode. So hopefully you've dug it. And John Wolbrandt, thanks for appearing on Surf the World Save Us, because life's good here in Carpinteria.